Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Welcome to one and all. This is Call to Guidance with your host, Yunus Kawanga, the show that airs every Thursday evening from 8 p.m. until 9 p.m., speaking about everything and anything that has to do with dawah and community development. So if you want to find out how you can, inshallah, be a good donor, inshallah, for this upcoming Qurbani, if you're not planning to cut physically yourself, but you want to bless other people, inshallah, to actually take part in enjoying this beautiful month, obviously, of the Hijjah, but more specifically on the practice that we've learned from Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or rather from initially from Sayyidina Ibrahim Alayhi Salatu Wasalam, and want your proceedings to go to people in Malawi. Join me later at around 8:30, where I speak to Hafiz Muhammad Kulusi, as he and his foundation called the Muhammad Fadawa Foundation are running a program of sending funds to buy people in Malawi goats, sheep, and cows, so that they can enjoy, inshallah, the blessings of Qurbani. However, we start off tonight speaking about a more I can say a general talk in terms of what happens after the election. So we are in our post-election fever moment or frenzy, and on this, inshallah, I am joined by Ustādh Anwar Jhetam, who is a graduate at the UJ with logistics. He mastered in logistics, and he also did the Ālim program at the Jāmi'ah al-Islamiyah, and is also the co-author of the Muslim Voters Guide series, which we were reading a couple of weeks ago, trying to understand what is our role as a Muslim community in South Africa, especially coming to the elections. And Ustad Anwar is also, can call it a fanatic, but is very interested in usul al-fiqh, politics, and community development. So that's why it's very relevant to speak to him about this topic tonight. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ustad, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairah for having me tonight.
Excited to be here. Barakallah Fik. It's actually our pleasure to have you with us. As I mentioned, people are going through a frenzy as to what's next after the elections, especially our Muslim brothers and sisters in our Muslim communities, which we've actually, through the results, we've seen some, subhanAllah, miracles that happened, not to even forget the Lens area where you are based, where a lot of the areas, it's found that most of the votes were found to be in favor of the DA, and which raised a lot of questions. But rather, before we get into much of those discussions, people just want to understand now, what does it mean now for us as the Muslim community going forward in terms of dealing with these recent elections of 2024?
Okay, shukran jazilan for that. So we passed through arguably what was one of the most important elections in the country since the birth of our democracy and the banning of apartheid since 1994. So this was one of the most important elections since then. So be that as it may, it's also coming at the time when South Africa is going through a lot of new challenges, going through everything that we see on a daily basis, see and live through on a daily basis, from our electricity issues to the larger issues of our economy, the failing healthcare system, the educational crisis that we are going through as well. So many things are, coalescing, so to say, that brings us to this moment where we went through the 7th national elections, and the results that we got actually shocked quite a bit of people. Many political analysts did not expect that the ANC would drop to 40%. Going from the 57% that they had in the last election, estimates were, maybe 45%, 45 to 49%, and they would be able to easily form a coalition with somebody else that would just be able to give them a that majority in parliament. There were some voices that said that they would get below 45%, but people usually thought that was quite an exaggeration. But the exaggeration became reality, and that's where we are right now. And considering the fact that the ANC, for the first time since 1994, did not have a clear-cut majority, did not win by a clear-cut majority And now they find themselves in a situation where they have to form coalitions with other political parties to govern. And now not just on a provincial level or on a local ward level, but rather on the national level, which is, since 94, 94, 99, 2004, 2009, 2014, 2019, they won all of these national elections successively. Yes, there's been a pattern of diminishing support for the ANC, but oftentimes it's, the diminishing support from one election to the next election has never been as much as 16 to 17%. That's the amount of support that they've lost. So now they find themselves having to form a coalition government. So many people in the country, Muslim and non-Muslim, South Africans of all shades and all orientations, all belief systems, were preparing themselves for, okay, we will have elections. There's big chances that we will have coalitions, but there were many people that felt that the ANC would get its 50% plus one, and then life would carry on. We would have, government forming very, very fast, and life would carry on. Well, now we're in this phase where coalition deals are being made, and the coalitions themselves are not as yet entirely clear whether the coalitions are going to be formed on the base of the ideology or the philosophies of political parties. Is that going to be kept in consideration, or is just going to be about expediency? Who can get me over that 50% mark so that I can govern? Are we going to see the emergence of a government of national unity? Maybe, for example, are we going to see minority rule, which is also a political option that does exist, in the scenario in which we find ourselves? Though obviously it would mean a rather disabled ANC in terms of, tabling and passing motions in Parliament. It's minority rule. So that's where we find ourselves in. It's a very, very interesting space. Obviously, things are very, very fluid. But now, what the Muslim community will have to do is that the Muslim community we have to consider this new political terrain that we have to navigate. So for a long time, and I will say this, for a long time, the idea has been, basically, and I'll say, just support the ANC and that's the end of it. Well, our role as Muslims demands much more from us than just saying, just support the ANC and that's the end of it. We are now forced into that circumstance of, okay, your best friend is not actually in good health right now. So you need to consider other things. And this is not disloyalty on any part, because there's no Sharia ruling that says you have to support the ANC. I think I missed that one in the Ālimiyah program. So there's no ruling as such. We have to support people on the basis of principle. We have to support people on the basis of who will serve the people. And those are important questions that the South African Muslim community needs to ask itself. I'm not necessarily against the ANC. At the same time, I'm not necessarily pro-ANC. I'm just a citizen of the Republic asking the question is that which government and which government arrangement in coalition is going to actually serve the people of this country? Because 30 years after the end of apartheid, and apartheid was absolutely haram, we are facing a situation where South Africans have to make a choice. Is it sink or is it swim? Do we uplift the country and move forward? It will be difficult, it will be slow, it will be painful. Or do we choose to just basically slide down and become one of those forgotten failed states in the dustbin of history? That's where we are.
Now, interestingly enough, mentioning that last part, which is, I think all of us, we agree on the same point that obviously Islam advocates for justice and standing with justice, to a point that even some of the prophets' traditions or hadith have mentioned that you need to, even if it's your brother who's doing or perpetrating in the injustice, you stand against them. Now, coming to the results, you mentioned also that there were interesting counts of the results that came out, especially in our areas where we've seen countless people who were standing up, railing against the situation in Palestine, and also more so trying to take people who are benefiting from the support of the Israelis to an extent that even locally in South Africa, we have parties which were mentioned that they are benefiting monetarily from the whole movement, etc. Then you see a group of Muslims in certain areas actually went on and voted the parties which are under such you can say mindsets and movements of supporting the Israelis. Now, there, I think that's another thing we needed to understand now. What could have been the issue there? Because one is that we're looking at obviously mentioning about justice and having a fair party which is going to rule according to delegating in terms of people's basic necessities being delivered, your service delivery having to be on time, etc. People having the basic needs like the Eastern Cape, as we've seen in the past few years, places where there's no even water, etc. But now coming to a point when the ballot has come in front of the person, then they tick the box next to the DA. Now, what is the shift there that we can look around this situation?
Okay. Firstly, I don't want to chastise, any people. So I'm going to be quite charitable and say that in many cases, sometimes what we've seen is basically just political ignorance. Unfortunately, miseducation or the absence of education. Perhaps people are not so politically educated to understand that what happens on the local affects the global, and you need to think global while acting local, right? So you have to factor in both your local issues while you are making your global issues while making local choices, and look at also consider global issues from a local lens. That means to say that, okay, people are being butchered and murdered and killed in Gaza. But now, how does that affect South Africa? The notion that it doesn't affect South Africa is actually false, because you are having political parties, one that are in support of the Zionist apartheid Israeli state, or they are benefiting from them. That's a fact. You are also having South African citizens with dual passports, dual nationality, who have served in the Israeli Defense Force. And some of them, for example, let's reference the Gaza docket that was opened up after the first Gaza war, end of 2008, start of 2009. Operation Cast Lead, as they called it. You had South Africans who were implicated in military service, in active combat duties in the Gaza under the banner of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, which goes against South African law. So one can't say, oh, you know what's happening here, what's happening there doesn't affect things here, right?
Right.
So there's that to consider. So we take on the first level, I think perhaps, people are not politically educated. We need to do more political education within our community to understand how the system works, to understand where is the South African Muslim community in relation to the Ummah. That's a very important thing. The other reason that I can think of is that people were voting with their feet. That means to say they were just considering local issues. And so before accusing people of selfishness or even racism, right? Swart khafar, as they say, before going down that route, I would say, okay, you know what? People were just considering local issues. So they felt like, okay, the current government is not serving us. We do need a change. The only viable option that they seen was one of these pro-Zionist parties, being the DA, right? And as such, you know what? We're going to vote for them. Unfortunate, but that's their choice. My political strategy, I've said this before and I will say it again, has not necessarily been to privilege the ANC. My mind, as a voter, and this is what I've done to educate various communities that I had the opportunity of speaking for Jumu'ah at, was to separate between the pro-justice, pro-freedom parties, aka the pro-Palestine parties, and then the apartheid genocide supporting parties. That means the Israeli supporting parties. Then what I do is I exclude the Israeli supporting parties from my electoral choice, and I only look at that pro-justice, pro-freedom bloc, and then I choose from there who I want for the national, who I want for the provincial, who I want for regional. So my choice then is between a group of parties that have shown and expressed solidarity for the people of Palestine. So as a Muslim, my conscience is clean in terms of, in terms of the genocide that is taking place against our brothers and sisters. I have chosen a government that is not supportive of that. I've chosen a political party for national level, provincial level, and regional level that is already talking against the genocide. And at the same time, I'm not falling into the trap of saying I only have one choice, which is the ANC. I think our people need a level of political maturity to understand that the local is connected to the global, and you are part and parcel of the ummah. And also there's more than just one choice for the local, So that's how I looked at it. Before we go down the route of saying that people were just selfish, and Swart Khafar, they were afraid of a black government, in certain parts of the country, so they decided, oh no, you know what, let's go with the whites.
Right. Okay. Let's just take a quick break, inshallah. And when we return, inshallah, we'll go deep into the understanding. I think people also are still struggling to understand what does it mean now when we say that we'll be walking into a coalition government. So, inshallah, after the break, we'll go deep into that discussion, inshallah. Stay tuned.
Ameen.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media. Humanitarian journalism.
Searching for elite local and international investment and advisory services from an award-winning firm? Look no further than the Belmont Meyer Group, your gateway to unparalleled investment and wealth management. At Belmont Meyer, we believe in the art of wealth creation, a meticulous process fueled by our unwavering commitment to excellence. With a focus on providing elite alternative investments and quality advice, we also pride ourselves on maximizing value for our esteemed investors, as seen through our consistent outperformance. Your financial success is our top priority. Join us at Belmont Meyer and experience the difference firsthand. Ready to embark on a journey of greatness? Contact us today. Reach out to the Belmont Meyer Group on 078 786 1698. Call or WhatsApp or email us at info@belmontmeyer.com. Elevate your financial future with Belmont Meyer, where every detail matters.
Send food and send kindness to those who have lost their homes and have been plunged into poverty. For those who are a meal away from starvation, a food parcel means an entire family can eat this Ramadan. That's the power of food. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
It's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists, with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Valley's Motor Spares. We supply motor spares and accessories for all makes and models of motor cars, LDVs, bakkies, trucks, and earth-moving equipment. We deliver on time, every time. Please contact us via WhatsApp on 014-592-0925 or call 014-592-0925 or visit 28 Zenderling Street, Rustenburg. Remember the name, Valley's Motor Spares.
In the Eastern Cape, a single mother and her 3 daughters face a week without food. Last year, 15,000 children were hospitalized for severe malnutrition, With a 60% unemployment rate, the crisis deepens. But you can light the way. This Ramadan, your support can turn despair into hope. The Al Fida Foundation is on the ground providing vital aid. Join us in the fight against hunger and use your zakat to feed Muslim families in Gqeberha and rural Eastern Cape. Send us an email at alfida@telkomsa.net or contact us at 041 484 1288 for Section 18A tax certificates or enquiries. The Al Fida Foundation, together turning compassion into action.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media, your humanitarian broadcaster.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Welcome back. You've joined us as we unpack the post-election fever with Sheikh Anwar Jhetam. And the last point was speaking about in terms of what could have caused people in certain areas, looking at lands who seems to have results where many people actually voted for the DA. And going also into Cape Town, some areas which are predominantly Muslim areas have the same results or even more. However, now, as you mentioned before, you alluded to the coalition government which might take place regarding to the results that we've received from the elections. Now, for a layman, a person who doesn't really follow much into into politics, now they want to understand, what does it mean to go into a coalition government, and what would be now the effects, more specifically for us in the Muslim communities? What can go right and what can go wrong in that regard, inshallah?
Okay, shukran for that. Look, it's quite a complex question, but first to start off with what are coalitions? We are talking about within the political landscape of South Africa, different parties working together to govern the country. Different parties, and they can have very, very different philosophies. They can be, for example, the EFF, which comes across as a socialist or a communist party, or having a socialist or communist philosophy, working with someone that has a very, who has a very pro-capitalist approach, such as the DA. That's an example. The ANC is more of a, let's say, a social democratic, a social democratic party. So them now working with another party, such as perhaps the DA. Irrespective of the philosophies of the parties, it's just simply parties in partnership with one another to govern together. Now, what will determine the relationships and the power dynamics in that relationship? Is it a matter of the strongest, the party with the highest percentage of support? They will be the dominant partner in a coalition arrangement, or could it actually be the smaller party who's needed to make sure that the dominant group can stay in power? So those are internal dynamics that are still being discussed. There are possible coalitions on the table, and these are only possibilities, right? So no one is predicting the future here. So we are talking about a possible ANC and DA coalition. We could be talking about an ANC-DA coalition, perhaps with 1-2 other parties, maybe the IFP, maybe the Good Party, maybe Al-Jāmi'ah, maybe the EFF, possibly. The DA believes that it wants to stay away. It wants to prevent what they call the Doomsday Coalition or the Doomsday Pact, which is a MK, ANC, EFF coalition, right? They set dead set against us, and as such, they are currently engaging with other political parties to prevent this. That means to say that they are already talking to the ANC about a possible ANC-DA coalition and what that could look like, right? Remember the words of Jacob Zuma, or rather his daughter, saying that they would consider a coalition with the ANC but without Ramaphosa. And then the ANC later on comes on at its press conference at the National Results Center saying, that they will not be going into partnership with anyone that does not respect the constitution. And Cyril Ramaphosa, the national president, is not going anywhere. He is part and parcel of the ANC. So he basically signaling perhaps signaling to South Africans that they may not consider a partnership with the Umkhonto we Sizwe party that the former president Jacob Zuma is part of. Now, what does it mean for South Africans? It's not the first time that we will see coalition government, but it is the first time that we will see coalition government on a national level. We have seen coalition government on provincial levels and on ward levels. Most of the time, they have not been handled very, very well. So oftentimes it's had disastrous results. And who bears the consequences of said disastrous political coalitions is the everyday people. So we look at, for example, the city of Johannesburg. There was a coalition formed with a group of parties, and because of the power of small parties within the coalition, the power that they had was the power of the peacemaker. So you had a small party, Jāmi'ah, become, hold the important seat of being the mayor, holding the mayoral seat for the city of Johannesburg. And it's not because they received, let's say, enough votes to be able to supply the mayor. It's just because the ANC and the EFF could not agree with one another while being in coalition with one another who will be the mayor. So to basically reduce the tension between themselves, they used another political party, being Jāmi'ah, to supply the mayor. So neither the ANC or the DA then has the ANC or the EFF rather. Sorry, my apologies. It was the ANC and EFF for Johannesburg, and Jāmi'ah then holds the mayoral seat. So it hasn't really worked very, very well in municipalities and on a local ward level. Now the acid test is going to be on the national level. We could see, for example, if a good coalitions are put together, we could see good possible results for South Africans, provided that politicians are going to be mature, they're going to be principled, and that means that they're going to put the people first, as opposed to putting their parties and their own personal pride, in front of the people, and then govern badly at the expense of the people. So it really boils down to the political maturity of politicians. What does this mean for the South African Muslim community? It means that the political landscape has changed. It means that we now need to be thinking of how do we, as a faith community, which is diverse, which cuts across so many different racial groups, ethnic backgrounds, languages, understandings of traditional Islam. With all of that diversity, how are we going to participate as active citizens within the country? One thing that's missing in many, many communities in South Africa and around the world is that a lot of us feel that our duty as citizens starts and ends when we are at the ballot box. We go, we cast a vote in the elections, and then our duty is done. No, it's much more than that. And we need to now start to consider our place within South African society beyond just the votes that we cast on the 29th of May, 2024. We are in a new phase. And previously, the South African Muslim community in many pockets around the country was very much engaged in social, political, and economic issues and very active in communities. We need to rekindle that and be part and parcel of the fabric of society and get out of this mentality of, our privileges as Muslims. No, you have rights and responsibilities to the larger South African community. Don't come and claim privilege and elitism when you have not fulfilled anybody else's rights and responsibilities.
100%. Subhanallah. Jazakumullah khairan once again, Sheikh Anwar, for really unpacking that for us, especially at the time where people don't know what's happening at very uncertain times. But it does bring some sense of contentment or some sense of relief for us to understand that actually there's hope, inshallah. And I believe one of the main things I believe that people can learn from these elections is that tides can change at any time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it very beautifully, "Tilka al-ayyamu nudawwiluha bayna an-nas," that times change. We shouldn't expect things to be the same, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala change them for the better, inshallah.
Ameen,
Again,
inshallah.
may we as the South African Muslim community also do more for the community, do more for the state at large, inshallah ta'ala, for good results at the end, inshallah. Jazakumullah khaira once again, and really appreciate having you here. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khairah wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. So that brings us to the end of the first segment, inshallah. Let's take a break, and when we return, we'll be speaking Qurbani with Sheikh Muhammad Kulusi as he runs the Muhammad Dawah Foundation, which has a Qurbani program that's taking place, inshallah, to inshallah help and feed the people in Malawi. And inshallah, for those who are not looking at cutting personally, inshallah, let's try and help as much as we can, inshallah. So let's take a break, and when we return, we'll carry on with Sheikh Muhammad, inshallah.